Hey fan peeps, this is your podcast host Kunal here. I started this during the pandemic, and in this podcast I discuss my nerdy thoughts and hobbies with you, with the occasional special guest. From anime to Zeppelins, we talk about it all. Oh damn, y'all. Oh damn. This is like the Black Power Ranger episode, where like the old Power Ranger comes back to help the new Power Ranger who's black, like the Black Power Ranger, not because they're African American, but because they're both black.
We got what's what? I've never seen that episode.
Well, you're missing out.
So tell me more about this.
It's awesome. They're both Black Power Rangers, and one's the original Mighty Morphin one, and the other one is the next iteration.
Is he also black?
He is not black. I believe they're both Asian, actually, which makes it even more funny. Actually, so it's not the original Mighty Morphin. It's the next. It's like two and 3. So like they're on the third one, I think, at this point. And the second one was some dude. And so basically, what happens is like he has a lot of self-confidence issues, and the old Black Ranger, like he sees that he's in trouble, and he's Alpha tells him, "Don't use your old morpher." Like the connection to the morphing grid's bad because it no longer exists, and so you could potentially die as a result.
Yeah, that really hasn't stopped Tommy Oliver.
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah,
continue.
But it's just like it just makes me think of that episode because they have an epic handshake at the end of it. So that's the reason it's like you're back. So in all this like long-winded explanation that I tried to do in 10 seconds ended up being like 45. Was that Lance is back?
Yeah.
What's up?
Thank you, folks. I'm back. Glad to be here. You know, we're here.
That's right.
I got a cowboy hat. Kanal has not come dressed up.
I will, because he did it for me. I'm going to dress up this weekend. I don't know by the time this gets up and running, but like I'm going to C2E2, which is a convention in Chicago, and so I'm dressing up all those days that I'm there. But yeah,
is this a furry?
Come again?
A furry convention?
This is not a furry convention.
What is?
Fuck you. There might be a couple there, but for the most part, it's not a furry convention.
Yeah, there it is.
How many furry conventions do you go to, man?
I try to make it out at least twice a year. Just try to remind the people that, Black Bear is here. And
Brown Bear's just around the corner, too. Little Brown Bear's LBB is hanging out, man.
That's right. We're a proud community.
Hey, I mean,
we don't like being
100% do what makes you happy, but I'm not a furry guy, so like even though I have my fair share of fur on me, but
Wow, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we lost it because we went on a tangent about black people, Black Rangers, and now furries. I'm not even
I'm
sure.
excited just to have Lance back
keep
here.
The same episode today?
It's supposed to be about something completely different. So, it's
like, what are we talking about today? Are we just shooting shit?
We are talking about something that, so I called you up like a week ago or so, just like on a whim, and I'm like, fuck it. I'm finishing up Miss Marvel. So today's episode is about Miss Marvel. It's not about furries. It's not about Power Rangers. Both are important and, productive things of society. So
we're going
but it's important, and because of that, it really brought it brought so much joy to me watching it. So like the assassin and the king are back in the square and talking to each other, and we're here to do an episode of Miss Marvel. So yeah, I was also excited for this because you've brought her up many a times. Like even when we're just like moderately talking about Marvel or something like that, she always comes up in one form or fashion. So I wanted to get kind of your lowdown on her, if you don't mind.
Have I brought her up before? My memory's hazy.
Maybe not on the podcast, but you definitely, like in conversation, you brought her up to me at least.
I think when you look at what's going on in society today with, let's take Captain America, for example, mm-hmm. how Sam Wilson eventually takes over that title. It feels a little forced and a little like, we need a Black Captain America. And you kind of even see that when they were talking about casting a Black Superman. It's like, Well, you could do that, but there's a bunch of black superhero stories to tell. But that's something for another day. But Miss Marvel was interesting because I felt like she was a character of her own origin who took over the role of Miss Marvel from the original Miss Marvel, because now the MCU is just going with Captain Marvel for the white version
Right,
of the
right.
character. But originally she had that title of Miss Marvel before going over to Captain Marvel, taking it from
Okay, I was
a
wondering about that
male
too. Yeah.
a male counterpart. And so I thought it was interesting. She was interesting because she was so interesting that you forget almost that Miss Marvel was originally Carol Danvers,
Right. Mhm.
and here's Kamala Khan taking the role, and then she does something completely different
I love the way you say
from
your name, by the way. It was
Miss
perfect. It was
Marvel.
perfect. No, Kamala
Kamala
Khan. You
Khan.
said it perfectly
Uh,
and awesome.
I watched the show.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
But yeah. So that was a big thing for me, just seeing how she took that role and made it different, and like even her power set, and we'll get into this later or
Yeah.
even now, but her power sets was completely different.
Yeah. I noticed they changed it up. Like even from like when they show her in the comics, it's slightly
Right.
different than what they showed in the show.
Oh, it's entirely different.
So obviously this is a huge spoiler episode. If you haven't seen it, stop this episode now and come back after you're
Hmm.
done. It's only 6 episodes. You'll be done in no time.
Right.
Yeah, you can take a dancing break. We'll do it all the time. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean it's totally different, and that's it's one of those things, and I guess we can kind of jump into the overall impressions before we kind of go deeper into it.
Sure.
The show was great.
I'm glad to hear you say that, man. I really am. First impressions. What's your first
Okay,
impressions? Yeah.
first impression. Let's stick there. Great show. I don't want to get caught up in the moment of where it ranks in all these Marvel shows.
Yeah, let's let go of that for now.
I love how it was a standalone story for the most part that kind of really told a story without relying on big Marvel names. Like Tony Stark, or even in Doctor Strange, they had all these cameos and things of that nature. Miss Marvel kind of stood on her own. She didn't, you know, rely on a team up to help propel her to where she was.
Yeah, Danvers was kind of like a second tier kind of thing, not the
Right.
big couple, which is nice.
It's great to have these heroes, but then what are you going to do on your own? It's like finding yourself almost kind of story. There's things I didn't like just from a comic book fan standpoint,
Yeah.
being how liberal they were with her powers, changing them completely.
Yeah, yeah, that was kind of odd. Even if I haven't read the comics, but I knew enough to be like, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was an
Mhm.
Inhuman. She had
Yeah,
Inhuman
I was getting
lineage,
there next. Yeah.
and like I get it, but I also like grimace at why they did it because they were trying to be semi-cultural, but like at the same time, it's another kind of Orientalist trope of like, oh no, you're Eastern, you can only get powers from magic things. Here you go.
Well,
Now we don't know if the bracelet is purely magic or if it's a science we just don't understand.
they hinted at it, and I didn't get it at first, but the spoilers on the internet clued me into her being a mutant now, which is a big deviation from the comics as well. But they chalk it up to just the fact of the popularity of the Inhumans not being there, and how the
Ah,
mutants are more of a thing, and now
that's weird. I feel like it should be. I mean, granted, you and I saw parts of Agents of
right.
Shield, so like they did the Inhumans over there.
And then they had their show that kind of bombed. Well, not kind of bombed. It bombed.
It bombed after the third season. I felt after the first
Oh,
couple
not
seasons were
Agent of
actually.
Shield. Inhumans had their own show.
You mean just Inhumans? Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
didn't even see that. Yeah, I didn't see it.
No,
Yeah,
it bombed.
don't even. Yeah, okay, well, that's okay.
Get into it. What did you think overall?
I fell in love with it. I
Mm,
really did. Granted, like, so this is a Pakistani family, but here's the thing, and I don't care. I'm gonna say some things that are kind of shocking today in today's episode, at least for certain communities. But it's all good. I saw a part of my culture represented. I saw her going to a little Pakistan in New Jersey or New York and going and eating the same foods I grew up with. I saw her have similar social dynamics with like gossipy aunties and gossipy uncles. And granted, the religious aspect was not there. As I like to tell people, I stopped going to church because my family didn't like the choir. And that's like a true story. Like we just never went back after that. As they say, hashtag no regrets. I fully respect religion and everything, but it's just not for me. There's so many things I want to jump into here, but
let's just jump into it.
I saw her family have this level of hospitality. Like the culture between India and Pakistan is not as different as people make it out to be. Okay. The singular difference is their government and the fact that they have a majority of a Muslim population. That is really the big differences. Other than that, there's a lot of similarities. We both drink chai. We both have the same or similar sweets. Sure, there are genetic differences because Alexander dies around Pakistan. It's something that they don't really talk about. Like they did a terrible job in the movie about it, but he dies in Pakistan. So like there are some. I've heard stories. It doesn't match up with genetics, but if you find like certain genetic populations in Pakistan will have Macedonian DNA. Because of that, which I find pretty cool. They're attributed to the Pashtun, but they've done genetic testing and it doesn't match up. So that is a whole. I'm going to let anthropologists and biologists take care of that one. I'm not even going to touch it. But there's so much history that goes on there. You can't talk about Pakistan without talking about the partition, and I thought they did a great job of doing this. So it's 1947 that the partition takes place. And I won't jump into too much of a history thing here because you guys can go elsewhere and find that out. I'm going to do more of my views on the whole thing. My point being is that there's not so much of a difference. It's not even been 100 years. We're barely getting to 100 years. In 25 years, it will be 100 years. So everything as it stands today is still very new. The culture is not that dissimilar. Sure, it's not the same, but it's far more similar than people give it credit.
What I really liked about the show is that it did highlight that friction between India and Pakistan that I didn't know existed, and that might be
you have no idea
blissful ignorance from American life.
Well, it's funny. Like I was talking to someone who retired from the Air Force, and they were saying like, yeah, my end of the world scenarios are China, Taiwan, Russia, and the United States, and India and Pakistan. So we made the list. We're that cool. Both of us have nuclear powers. Both of us are connected fairly well. I can't speak to Pakistan's angle so much. And trust me, man, you should be glad you're not. I actually am happy for you that you're not in that whole back and forth between like the rift that's there, because it's still prevalent with our age generation. So like anyone's pretty much who's born in the 80s or 90s. Not so much. I've met other Pakistani people. A couple of people listen to the podcast. Thanks, guys. And they're decent friends of mine, and we get along great. We've always found the entire process, at least from what I've talked to them about at whatever level, to be like, it doesn't really affect us. We didn't grow up with it. And so I will say that, that it's easier for us to be separate from it because we didn't grow up with it. We don't have stories of having to leave everything. Because there are people who are incredibly wealthy that they don't talk about that just had to drop everything, literally everything, and just go to another city. And there was no way of recovering that wealth. And it is horrible because after this happened, it's been a wound that hasn't healed for a lot of Indians and Pakistanis to this day, to the point where like a lot of crime, a lot of killings. And I'm talking like children, everybody's on the table for this one. I have heard recently that some of those stories have been blown out of proportion, which I am happy to hear. But also like it leads me to, it's going to be impossible to research. One, they're either too old or too dead to answer those questions. So we're probably never going to get an answer for a lot of those things.
Well, it's kind of like what they were saying with Russia and the Ukraine. Like there were these stories that were coming out like.
And they have a very similar history. They're both Slavic communities.
Yes, but there was a bunch of stories that were coming out that you could immediately discount as false because of social media now. So it's kind of like in the past, there were these stories, and there's no way you can prove them or disprove them, and
now we have a better chance of doing that with technology and whatnot. Yeah.
So now it's
Yeah.
harder to like kind of make history and like exaggerate it. Now it has to be. Now it's just right in your face. Like we could see the things that were happening in a war right now live. Where back then it was like you just heard word of mouth, like, oh, this was going
and
on
you believe
over
it,
there, and you believe
right?
it. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't discount it. So it doesn't surprise me.
This is a classic British move on any colony they lose. They just basically take whatever plots of land that are there. And now I will be fair, and I did some cursory research on the guy who was in charge of partition. Basically, is actually his last name is Radcliffe, which made me think, he related to Harry Potter? What's going on there? But we'll see. He's maybe a distant relative. Who the hell knows? Basically, what the British do whenever they leave a colony of theirs and they've gotten independence, they discount any understood boundaries or have air quotes borders that the communities have, and they're just like, you know what, fuck you guys, and they just kind of draw a bunch of borders to fuck them over. And because they do that, and because they legitimize those borders to the world, it fucks them up for generations to come. They did this in Africa, they did this in India horribly. Now, to be fair, Radcliffe, who's in charge of partition, said that he's like, I don't even think he had been to India, and he's like, I only had like a couple months to figure out this whole thing. So part of it, at least from what I have seen, part of it I kind of like, I don't want to say I give him a break, but I understand why he did what he did with that. The entire thing is fucked up completely. And so because of this, a lot of people were killed, injured, raped, like you name it, it happened. Again, like we're saying before, we don't know how much of that is true, how much is not. The same thing, kind of similar aspect happens with Japan and China during the rape of Nanking back in World War II, but that's a whole nother story altogether. So regardless, to not get too far down the history thing, they did a really good job of being fairly objective and actually really kind. And I didn't expect it. I'll be very true to you. I didn't expect it.
You didn't expect Marvel to be kind to
to do that well, honestly. Because it's a hugely hotly debated topic. And they say a good point of it. Like every Pakistani family to this day will have a partition story. And I haven't really asked my friends too much about it because I just haven't. That's not something you bring up right away.
Well, I'm going to kind of bring this up with regards to the character in the show, Kamala Khan. There was always kind of like an Americanized girl underneath.
That's another thing I was actually glad they did.
Yeah, because I was wondering that if because what is she, first generation technically American?
She's essentially what I am, born and brought up here, as they like to say.
That was interesting to see because her family were so, especially her mom, was so big into the culture and the mosque, and how we know immigrant parents to be, where she didn't want her daughter caught up in these like American dreams and this American heroes and these fantasies where it's like, we need you to work hard and
and stay focused and everything.
And she was like, so like, if you you just had it playing in the background, especially that first episode, and you walked away, you'd be like, what is this, white teenage drama that's going on right now? Like, my mom won't let me go to Avengers Con.
Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of different things I want to say about what you said. I mean, like, they were trying to show that at this point they're all Americans. Like, sure, they her parents have spent decades in India and Pakistan at this point, but they also live in America. They live and breathe in America, and they will always have roots and lineage back to India and Pakistan. But their culture has fused now. It's fused with the American culture, and she has grown up with it. And she, it's a weird dichotomy being a first generation anything, because you're in a constant state of two worlds. People ask me why I like Star Trek so much. Is like really because of Spock in a lot of ways. That guy is stuck between two worlds the entire time.
Yeah.
Everywhere he goes to Vulcan, they say he's so human. He goes to Earth, they say he's too Vulcan. Yeah, it's a carbon copy of what happens to me.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to India, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so American. When you go to America, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so Indian. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do with myself?
Oh, shit.
I don't know.
I definitely saw that in the show now that you mention it. But then I was wondering, too, as a child of an immigrant, like, it seemed like she got really attached to, like, one specific cultural thing in America. Like, and then even her friend, what was the friend's name? Nakia
Bruno.
She had a little bit, because I remember there was a part in the mosque, like, she lost her shoes, and they were, like, some, like, designer shoes, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to wear, like, you're going to wear Nikes and stuff. And
well, it seems like Nakia was obsessed with the designer things, like that whole vibe and culture, where Kamala was like, okay, I like superheroes and the Avengers, and now I'm devoting my entire time to it. I mean, it kind of seems like you're a little bit that way too, where you find like something in American culture that you really love. Maybe your parents don't care for it too much because it deviates too far outside of.
Yes and no. I mean, like, part of it is like, you're right. Like, you got to remember that they grew up here. Yeah. They didn't grow up in Pakistan. They didn't grow up in Pakistan. I think her friend is supposed to be Turkish, and she didn't grow up in Turkey. That's why she makes a quip about how they don't teach about the Byzantine Empire, which is essentially modern day Turkey. And
I didn't get it. It went over my head.
Basically, you didn't catch it because you weren't me in a history. That's fine. That's why I'm here. Basically, what happens is, like, the Roman Empire, like, gets so big that they're, like, at a certain point when things get too big, they get too bloated. There's a bunch of war that happens, and I'm oversimplifying, and I'm kind of rusty on this, but essentially he's like, fuck it, and he goes and makes that side of the Roman Empire just dissolves because of that. So and then like the Byzantine Empire happens, and then then the Ottoman Empire happens, and that's modern day Turkey. So in a way, that's their lineage, and she's like, they only covered one class of it, and we never talked about them again, and it's incredibly infuriating because they have a whole history. We forget because, like, a lot of that part of the world is the reason why we have a lot of writings from Plato and Socrates. There was a lot of trade that happened, and then when the plague happens, all of, like, Europe's resources get, like, and literature gets destroyed, and they go back over to the east, and they're like, oh yeah, we've had this copied down for years. So literally what we're learning today is a copied version of a copied version of Socrates, Plato, and everything that is the bedrock for Western understanding.
Gotcha.
But yeah, here's the thing. Like, like, you grew up here, you're gonna find something that other kids are gonna do, and you're gonna be interested in it. That's just a fact of the matter. Is I'm like, hell, like, I love cartoons, be them Japanese or American, and I grew up on those shows. Like, I didn't grow up in India. I didn't grow up with the same things that my parents did, or anything that other Indians in our generation did out there. Yeah. So that's just a fact. They're trying to show that they're like, sure, these kids have a lineage, but they are all American at the end of the day.
She was so American that she was like a underachiever in high school. Like, remember early on, the counselor was like pulling her into the office. Like,
it was very goofy.
Like, you're just daydreaming in class. Like, are you even trying?
So there's one thing that I thought that they were trying to talk about is like there are things that she might be not. I think the term now is neurodivergent, but essentially, like, she has a very vivid imagination, and instead of just like being someone who works hard and does everything like their parents want, she's a dreamer. Yeah, she's someone who's trying to do everything. Like, yeah, I get your whole point of like there was a lot of things that the show did that they kind of watered down certain situations.
Ooh, tell me those.
Her parents are comparatively very much more liberal and very, very like hands off compared to a lot of people that I know that have had similar backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, because it was almost kind of refreshing, or it was kind of like.
And I think they did that for a reason.
What was the reason?
Because if they show them being parents of India and Pakistan can be very overly demanding and smothering to the child, to people in our generation, because they want them to be a certain way, and it's kind of forced very hard. And if they saw that, then it kind of would have been like, great, another example of like why we're stuck in this mess. Whereas like this
Right.
was a refreshing take of like, no, like she's fighting them constantly.
Oh
And
yeah.
she wants their approval, but she also wants to do her own thing. She's
Yeah.
navigating that entire field. And if they didn't do it like this, then later shows can't come along and show the true nature of it. This I think has to walk so that other shows can run.
Yeah.
I think is going to be the reality of it, honestly.
I think there's an interesting thing that occurs with her and her mom, like where you're right, she's fighting for their approval, but then she's rebelling sometimes, I feel like, because the mom isn't giving her answer to those questions that she asked. Like she early on asked about the bracelet, this came from
Yeah.
grandma, what was she like? What happened?
Welcome to intergenerational trauma in Asian cultures, and we just deal with everything by sweeping it under the fucking rug. You find out about shit like 20 years later.
That's Black culture too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Like it's immigrant and non-white culture to a T. Like we don't talk about shit until it's mission critical. Like I found
Right.
out stuff from my parents is like, oh yeah, I was in politics for a short time, or like, yeah, one of your uncles was a Gurkha commander, like the special forces for the rest of the world. And I'm like, how do you just casually mention this when we're having Nepali food? Like, how do you casually just mention this when
Right.
you're tired one day? So they don't talk about things unless they have to. It's because think about this: she is the first generation. Her mom is the first generation in Pakistan after Kamala's grandmother, who is trying to just like get money, get set, and get to America.
Right.
There is no time to think about your feelings. There is no time for any of that bullshit. That's what white people do. So, like, and it's not true. That statement's completely fucked up, but it's where their mindset is. They don't have
Right.
time for any of these things. Their time is just to make sure that you have a good life. And so everything else is like, well, fuck it. Who cares about that? Like, I'm only care about you going to school and you being healthy. So that's where their mindset's coming from. That's why she just throws it aside.
Yeah.
It's easier to do that. And I can't blame them because that's how they were raised too.
Yeah. I think there was an interesting point where it was like I realized how old I'm becoming to where, back in the day, if this show would have came on in like my teenage years or early 20s, I would have definitely been like, I'm on Kamala's side. Why won't they let her go to Avengers Con? But then it's like, I'm watching the show and I'm like, this little spoiled brat. Like, your dad is gonna go. I don't know what's going on at these Avengers Con, especially in a world where superheroes exist.
Okay, if you say that last part, then I'm with
Yeah.
you. But otherwise, if you lived in this world, I'm like, okay, what the hell's going on? But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
with the
Well,
world that Marvel is in,
nah,
yes, yeah, like
I'm with the mom almost because I'm like, what boys are going to be at this party? That's
yeah,
not,
and she has
it's
no
a little
concept of
side
what she's
note.
going to.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a little
And
side note.
that's exactly what like that. Oh my god, when she said that, I just did an epic face palm when I was sitting on my couch. I'm like,
Right.
lady, you have no idea what's going on in your daughter's life. You've not been listening, which sounds for something I've very similar had. But we've made strides. I'll say that.
If you play like the Marvel Square Enix game, like I never really got through it, but like the opening part is like, I would say she's roughly maybe the same age, maybe a little bit younger, but she's like so excited to go to this Avengers like day event in San Francisco, and like she brings her dad, and like she's super excited to be there with her dad. Like they have the close knit bond, and then like in the show, he's like, I'm not taking dad to Avengers Con. And then that was a fucked up scene where like he came like trying to do the right thing.
Here's
And
the thing: like he's trying to do the right thing, but he's not listening to them.
yeah.
She wants to go as Carol Danvers. Had he like
Oh yeah.
joined her in another way, be like, hey, like you can be Carol Danvers, I'll be,
You're right.
I don't know, like chubby Iron Man or something like
Well,
that.
he wanted to be the Hulk.
He wanted to be the Hulk, but that's the main problem. They're not
Yeah.
listening to her. They're
No,
not. There's
you're
no
fair.
the communication. That's where part of me was like, I mean, if you just tell them you want to go as Miss Marvel, maybe they can like
Right.
meet you halfway. But like
Well,
this is the thing that a lot of parents do. They just decide things for you, and then they're mad when you don't want to do them. Because that's how things work in Asian
Yeah.
families, man. They just decide things for you, and like when you don't respect it, then they get mad at you. So this is how it works.
to go on that point, I wonder too, though, because I feel like there's a lot of things that, like you're right. I think it's like Asian, Indian cultural thing. But then I
Yeah.
wonder too if it's just like a broader gender thing, because what we know from the comics is like every female superhero is like the baddest chick on the planet. Like they look like fucking incredible.
Yeah, they're like jacked to the nines and
Right.
like femme fatale kind of thing that's going on.
Exactly. And I wonder kind
Yeah.
of like in the show, because it's like in a real kind of like in a realish world kind of way, like
hmm
they're seeing Miss Marvel as, you know, this white blonde in a tight outfit.
Risque.
Right. And it's
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
really, but then you look at what the show is, you know, where the show is set, and you kind of get like maybe the idea is I don't want my daughter, who is a teenager in an impressionable age, thinking it's okay to go dressed up in a tight leather outfit
And the thing is,
cosplaying.
her outfit wasn't even that tight. It was
Mm,
actually
no.
like I appreciated her having the outfit she did. Honestly,
I think it goes to your point that maybe if she would have told them, hey, I want to go as Captain Marvel, here's my outfit, maybe they wouldn't have the problem, because they never really had that conversation.
that's the thing. The communication is really bad
Yeah.
because how dare you talk back to your parents? Now, granted,
Oh,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
have
yeah.
that.
100%.
I didn't have that, but like they showed a very watered down version, and even like in comparison, like other parents in that show are like, oh, this is Kamala Khan, this is Mina's daughter. Like no one, this is her name Mina, her mom, whatever her mom's name, I
Mhm.
forgot. And she's like, oh, it must like no wonder because she's seen as outlandish in comparison. And I feel like they did that as a reason to like help people get in essentially with this whole dynamic. The parents were a lot less hard on her than other brown parents would be, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. And again, like I don't have a female brown perspective. That is going to be
Yeah.
someone else's perspective on that, and I don't want to speak
Right.
too much on that.
Right.
But from what I have seen, it is definitely hard for especially women in my culture. They get a lot of shit, a lot more shit than they probably talk about.
Can we talk about
Yeah.
the kind of pseudo? I don't want to give Bruno too much shit, but he was kind of like a reminder of like you need a great white man to
Yeah. I kind of thought about that too.
to kind of help you, because like even I mean let's
Yeah.
if we take we go out of Miss Marvel for just a brief second.
Sure.
I don't even know if you could use Black Panther as an analogy, but there was
The
a
white agent from the CIA.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
They always need a white person to help you out.
there, yeah.
I mean, like you need one person to talk to the cops for you. It's always going to be your white friend. It's not going to be anyone else.
Yes, the
It's
Dave
not-
Chappelle. Gotcha.
It's true, man.
It's true. But you know, I say that, but then it feels like Bruno didn't feel like a
He felt like a real friend.
he felt like a real friend. He felt like, and I've heard this, like people say it in podcasts about New York, like you're not really, New York, New Jersey, it's like you're not really like black, white, Indian. You're from New Jersey. You're from New York.
Right.
You're a native of that city.
Because those are more integrated. Even with all of like the problems that they have, it's still a more integrated place. And I loved how they made him part of the family.
Oh yeah.
Like she went out of her way to like.
Yeah.
I think he was at the festival.
He was.
And I know that like every time he came, he's like, "Hey, like Bruno, you're gonna go home soon, right?" He's like, "Would you like to stay for dinner?" He's like, "No, I gotta go." He's like, "Okay, we'll just hang on a sec." He's like, No, it's okay, I gotta go." She comes out with like 6 Tupperwares. And he's like, "How the hell did you get that ready?" "Thank you." But and so I loved like that was another thing going back to where we started. But yeah, like it's a matter of like him being a friend. The trope I think is what you're looking for, is like the trope of seeing one white dude has to be there to make it happen.
He has to be there, and he can't be. He may not be the focus, but he was equipped enough to be like, all right, you have these powers. We need to test them. You know, I'm a super genius. You know, I can develop you
anything.
The
She's basically
suit,
her like
exactly.
the young Tony Stark.
Yeah, but I mean, I liked going back to the cultural thing. I liked how they did something where, he was showing up to all these events because he's invited. The family loves him, and he's
100%.
he's showing up in the garbs and the outfits, and it's like, and I
Yeah.
think it's an innocent moment because it's like, he's like, "Am I doing too much? Is this a lot?" And they're like, "No, fuck
Yeah.
no."
We love vibrant colors, man.
Yeah,
We love
vibrant color.
We do. We like vibrant colors, and he's like, "Is this?" I took it as like he was wearing stuff that was too much, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Is this too much?" And he's like, "They're like, no,
No.
but you just like Indian weddings. They're like We just talked about it in the last episode I threw up. But like they are like colors everywhere. Like
Yeah. It was
I
like showing appreciation.
yeah, like and are you trying to ask me if was it appropriation?
Well, I'm not even asking because I feel like too many times like we get hung up on that just because someone
Yeah,
outside our race does something like
yeah,
I'm trying to think of an example like Eminem dress up like they're like, oh, he's cultural appropriating.
yeah.
Elvis does, even though he
Black
did,
culture.
does black culture.
Yeah,
He does black culture, but like it just seemed like an innocent moment. Nobody was upset. It felt organic.
he was at a community where they were doing it too.
Yeah,
It wasn't just this. And like, here's the thing: like when I will say this one thing: like whenever people dress up like that, and typically they're white people who wear it because it looks good on them, and it does.
right.
I'm not here going to dispute that, but the same people from that race and slash culture that comes from would get ridicule and hate for wearing that,
Right.
and he's not going to. Said white person wearing that is not going to get nothing, and that's where the disconnect happens. And so I don't really know a way to fix that, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
that's something that should be considered, and be like, if you're going to wear this, then you have to, like, I don't know, maybe help out the
Yeah.
oppression that goes on with this. And I don't know how you do that. That's a whole nother conversation.
I think you do what he did. He does as, a kid. I think it starts young because, he was helping the dad, figure out technology.
There's so much. I was just groaning when
He's
he
like
was doing that.
such an innocent character, honestly.
The dad was actually one of the best characters on
Yeah.
that show.
No,
Like, he was
like-
so lovable.
He's like that side character that you just grow appreciation for.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like he doesn't have to be in every scene, but
when he's there,
Yeah.
you're happy he's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it took me a while to warm up to the mom, but like once you see like how she grew up and what
Yeah.
her story was, then I was like, okay, she's cool.
You didn't. I feel like early on, like after they mentioned the partition, like even just mentioned it before they really got into it. But I was like, all right, this woman has a tragic background, like, and I felt like you could already tell.
Oh
know what
yeah,
I
you
mean?
could, but I wanted more than just like, oh, she has a tragic backstory. Like, let me get to know her a little more, and I'm glad they did that.
And I think that just me getting old, because I was like, I just didn't like, I never like hated her or like, oh, the mom is too hard on her. I just never really felt that. I'm like, there's a
Okay.
reason somewhere I mean, it might be misguided a little bit, but I always felt like there was a reason.
That's the thing. It comes from a good place.
Yeah.
If it was a different culture, I would probably have a little more space to think about it. So I would probably be along your lines. Like,
Mhm.
she's doing this because she's
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
protect her daughter in a culture she didn't grow up in.
Yeah.
To be fair, I would have done the same thing.
Mhm.
But like communication is lacking, and also number two, she's not really getting the chance to know what's going on. She's just trying to protect her daughter from things she doesn't understand.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the disconnect happens. And like,
Right.
who can blame her unless she have the time to figure that out with trying to provide for her? I don't know. They showed them as being like kind of middle class, but I didn't really know how much money they had necessarily.
They seem very well. I mean, not what I mean. They
Not
seem really
like well off, not rich, but definitely have everything they need.
Cause didn't they have Black Kamala a car? Wasn't that the whole thing in the beginning?
No, like
That was her dad.
that was her dad's or mom's car, one
Her
of the two.
mom's car. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say, what was I gonna say? I felt like if the show was just strictly her high school drama, like if the parents were just background, like every once in a while they come and yell at her, but it was more focused on like, oh, I really like this boy, or like, oh, I can't pass this test. I feel like if it would focus more on that, I don't think it would have been a stronger show.
Okay, I agree. I thought you were going to say it would have been a stronger show if
No,
they
no,
did that.
no,
I'm
no.
like, I think they would have lost
Because
everybody.
no,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. I think
Yeah.
what a lot of time, I mean, it's hard for superhero shows to really like kind of grip you on like the non-superhero stuff, aka Hawkeye. Like
Yeah.
like we didn't care about young Hawkeyes. What was her name? Goddamn, Kate Bishop's.
It was fun, but it wasn't like, it didn't connect me the way that like
Yeah,
other shows would. And this one.
exactly. Because I felt like the most interesting
Yeah.
thing was like her background, her culture, and like her interactions with her family and friends. I thought that was the most interesting thing. Where Kate Bishop, like I really don't care that you're a trust fund baby,
Yeah, no one does.
and so they pushed her into like all these superhero like hijinks with Hawkeye, and
Yeah.
that's what really made that show. I feel like this show really didn't have too many like, oh, let's get her into superhero hijinks of
Right.
she stumbles upon a lair where the bad guys are robbing.
Like she literally is just trying to navigate so many different things, 2 different cultures, and then now getting superpowers. So she has 3 things at least that she's dealing with right now.
And she's not seeking out like the bad guys. She's not like,
No, she's trying to like figure out everything.
yeah,
It's a show about self-discovery, honestly.
right. And the superhero-ness is in the background, which I can appreciate.
Honestly.
Even as a superhero fan, because too many times we get that typical origin story where, I get these powers, now I'm going to test them on some random bad guys, then I'm going to find my villain.
It's a fresh take on it.
Yeah.
Like this and Shang-Chi have had similar things where like we're finally getting a breath of fresh air and they're different takes on them. They're not
Right.
just the white person coming and saving the day. It's like,
Right.
okay, this is something different culture and different way we're doing this too.
Yep.
Now, that hasn't been done to death yet, so that's why we still like it.
Right.
And I'm down for it. A couple things I want to do before we move forward. I want to get back to the partition for one part. They did a really good job of showing it to be fair, I thought. They didn't blame Hindus, they didn't blame Muslims, they didn't blame anybody. They just said this is objectively what happened. There is a beautiful scene in one of the later episodes where she's talking to her grandmother, talking about self-discovery, and she's like, I have roots in India, my passport says Pakistan, and then everything else in between is just pain. And I was like, wow, that was fucking beautiful. I really, really liked that part because there's so much back and forth violence between especially the Hindu and Muslim communities in India.
Mm-hmm.
It's really bad. You don't hear about it too often. Conflicts that happen all the time. And that was actually one of the things that the British used against us to separate us. And it was really cool to finally have an American take because a lot of them have come to America to escape that bullshit. And this is one place where they just were like, no, we're gonna give this the stage it deserves in a small capacity. And I really appreciated that because you got to think about this. India is not really as unified as it has been conquered a bunch. There's 1,600 dialects, 5,000 years of recorded history. And I mean recorded, not the entirety, the recorded portion. A lot of people invaded and have stayed. That's why you have a ton of different martial arts and a ton of different weapons that even all of the bad guys were using in it. Like they were using whip swords, shorter swords, and then even like the same sword that, same like club that, Goku's based actually on Indian myth, believe it or not. The whole story of Journey to the West is really founded from him. Sun Wukong is based on an Indian god called Hanuman. And Hanuman has this weapon, it's called a dund. And it's basically just this big fucking baseball bat. And I saw one of the bad guys using that throughout the entire show. And I was like, they did their research. And their music was really good. Riz Ahmed was in it. MIA was in it.
Oh, MIA.
MIA was in it. She was in for she had one of her lesser known songs.
Oh, okay.
I forgot what it was, but she's in it. And then Riz Ahmed, as well as the Sweatshop Boys, who I never really.
Oh, the Sweatshop Boys, I know them.
So I never really knew who they were. I didn't really know there were Indian rappers. I thought. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, it's just black rappers and Eminem. Yeah. That's it. I'm kind of sad because I need to go back and listen to that now. And Riz Ahmed started out with them, which I think was kind of cool. And he's Pakistani. MIA is Sri Lankan. And they have their own history with India too that has happened because her dad was actually a Tamil tiger and basically was a terrorist group. And she ran away with her mom to England and everything to escape that whole thing. But that's a huge little thing that's going on. This was another part I wanted to talk about too. There's that scene where she mentions the drones.
I know you're going to get into it, but I'm going to say why, after
Yeah.
talking to you and finishing the show, why I think that it was just by chance. Possibly.
Okay.
But I want you to get into why, because what you said off air was super interesting. But
Yeah.
then when I saw the end of the show, I was thinking, was the machines just there for another reason? But I'll get into it after you talk about it.
Okay. Cool. There's a part where the first time she really starts showing her powers was, I think, the Eve celebration, and
Yep.
this is when that kid is climbing like an idiot on the wall and
Right.
trying to take a selfie because he's an American and a dumb kid. He's gonna do this thing. The poor guy just wanted to be cool, like give him a break, but he's still an idiot. When she's saving him and then has to run away because damage control is coming.
Yep.
There's this portion where she's jumping and like tripped on a drone.
Yep.
What I really saw during this whole point is like one of the really dark parts of our the U.S. military, especially in Pakistan and other Arab countries or areas of interest that the U.S. military and intelligence is in. They've been killing people with drones, and it's been a point of extreme anxiety for especially Pakistan, and Obama was a big proponent of it, as well as presidents before him. And I'm sure Trump loved pressing the button every once in a while. What would happen is like typically at the end of like Pakistani weddings, and this is something I've heard, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who's listening to this, but typically you'll go off and shoot around in the desert for fun. And so like that was often seen as, oh, they're arming wars, let's send a drone and kill everybody. So they'd end up killing people at weddings.
Yeah.
And so like she makes a definitive point to talk about the drones. And that like really hit me when I saw it, because like there have been satirical cartoons that Pakistani animators have made about them to talk about the anxiety for it. Stephen Colbert was talking about how anxiety medication has gone through the roof in Pakistan because of the drones just circling around where they are living. And I granted this was back when they were kids, and I'm sure it's worse now. Right. So that was really interesting to hear, because that's one of the things that they just like quietly come and kill a lot of Muslims with. Yeah. But go ahead and say your piece with it.
I was looking at it like at the end of the show. I was trying to think of like all the hidden Easter eggs, especially when you find out Kamala's a mutant.
Right.
So I was thinking back to the drone thing, and one thing that's associated with mutants are machines and like the Sentinels.
Oh my God. How did I not think about that? Okay, yeah.
So my whole thought process is if they're trying to introduce the X-Men or mutants into this world, what's one thing that is associated with them or known for hunting mutants down, and that's the Sentinels. So I was thinking the drones may be some type of early
Sentinels.
Early Sentinels, early indication that
maybe
whenever there's a super powered individual, we're gonna get these machines, and when they fail, we got to make them bigger, stronger. And so I don't know what other shows.
Did the Sentinels ever have sonic boom abilities, like sonic wave attacks?
Some of them did, like depending on like what iterations, they kind of like would develop like
because they made a big deal about using those types of weapons on especially the bad guys and Kamala.
Yeah, it's like different weapons to kind of neutralize the threat. I know in like sometimes in the comics or even in like the old shows, you would see like a certain Sentinel upgraded with a weapon that could, neutralize a specific mutant that they wanted to, handle. Like Cyclops, for example, like he could blow through a regular Sentinel, but they'll equip this one with like a special alloy or aluminium that he can't just blast through. So I think that goes to the whole, we're going to make them bigger, stronger, and better equipped so we could neutralize the threat of the mutant. So I'm not dismissing what you're saying, because
I think it's doing both, honestly, now that you mention it.
I think it could blend both.
Yeah. The more you talk about it, the more I'm like, this is actually really good writing, because they seem to be doing both.
And one thing we do know about Kevin Feige is like...
Phage? Is it Phage?
Is it Phage?
I never know how to pronounce it.
Is it Phage? We'll go with Phage. Or we just call him Kevin.
Kev. Good old Kev.
Kev. One thing about him is like if it's true, he's silently like planting those seeds, like starting with Doctor Strange. You know, they had Charles Xavier, and you heard the little X-Men music playing when he arrived, and then you go to Miss Marvel, and now you got her possibly being a mutant, and then the song playing again. And then I'm wondering now with Black Panther, is Namor going to be chalked up to being a mutant? Because in the
Oh,
comics,
Namor?
Namor,
Like,
Namor. Is that how you say it?
I thought it was Namor,
I always
but
just
you
say
are
Namor.
you're the Marvel guy. I'm gonna go with you on this one.
Well, I don't know how to pronounce words. Words are hard,
I mean,
but
they have they're hard, man.
I wonder because like in the comics, he's like sometimes considered like Marvel's first mutant, even though that's not true because of what we know about Apocalypse.
Right? Yeah.
But if he's considered a mutant, I think it's just all little things that they're doing to create this world with the mutants, because it'll be really interesting because the mutants have been missing from the Marvel universe since the first Iron Man.
Since we fucked everything up, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and the mutants have always been this cornerstone for animosity and fear. And then what better group to kind of capture that than with Muslims and India and Pakistan, because there's a group of people
that brings it to today. Honestly, we're modernizing it. We're not just doing what they did. Like we're using source material to like, how do we tell the story of today? And like for X-Men, it was civil rights. It was gay rights in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
And I think now this is the next iteration, is like, this is how we talk about the other group that's under fire now, literally under fire, which is really wild.
It's those marginalized groups, and I think it's easy because you could even do.
How can you wear a cowboy hat and tie them up?
Oh man!
Fuck you, man.
I'm cultured. But no, I mean, I'm just thinking about that. Like, how can you capture that feeling that she's a mutant, and then like she won't be a stranger to it if they, keep her down the path of being a mutant, and she appears in future things for mutants. But that's really my point on that.
It can get pretty bad. I won't name names, but I've heard shit in family gatherings talking about people from Pakistan, and they get called rapists, fanatics, killers. And this is from the older generation, not my generation of people there. But it can get pretty bad, and tensions are really high. When it comes to that generation, they haven't forgotten, and it's going to be hard for them to forget unless they do intensive therapy and have the space for it. And from my perspective, it's always so odd because I always see more of the similarities than anything. Granted, I come from a different angle at it, and I have the privilege of not being born into it. But this is the problem in intergenerational trauma. It just happens.
To bring it to the show a little bit, you see that with Kamala and what's the boy that she starts to like?
Oh, Kareem.
But you see that with them.
Or are you talking about the Red Dagger guy?
I think it's Kareem, the dude she has a crush on. Like initially, and then she finds out the mom is trying to
Pretty
use
boy,
her.
yeah. I remember him.
Pretty boy.
It's hard to forget.
But he was dreamy, wasn't he? Like,
dude has a 6-pack, man. Good for him.
Like, you could drive me around in that car. Teach me to drive. I have my license.
Teach me how to do. Like, I want to know how. Like, I want him to teach me how to like do that fucking front flip off of the ceiling of the house, the roof of the house. That was fucking cool. You're welcome.
There was like there was like one really beautiful girl, Nakia, and then we're talking about the guy. Anyway,
I love Nakia. Nakia was beautiful.
She was beautiful. That's why I was like, Kareem, why are you going for fucking Kamala? There's Nakia right there. Jesus Christ. Kamala looks like an adorable little child. Like, you want to pet her on the head, but you don't want to fuck it. Just like leave her alone.
Oh my God, man.
Sorry.
Damn.
That went way off where I was going with.
I mean, I will say that I think she's really cute. I think she's really cute. I love how she's a nerd, and she actually like would give presentations with her family on the Marvel movies. So if anyone was going to play Kamala Khan, it was going to be her, and she's the perfect choice for it, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, she's great. I don't take away from her acting ability.
I also think she hasn't fully grown up yet. Like, she's like barely 8. She's like barely 19, so she still has some time to like fully develop.
Feel it's creepy because I'm just like, she's adorable, but
sure.
She's adorable, but I don't want to do anything for her.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know her exact age, but I think she's still pretty young.
Probably like
Yeah.
Because I was telling my brother that it's like you get these girls that are like
Nakia is in her 20s.
yeah, like early 20s,
Yeah.
but then they can play a fucking high schooler.
Which like threw me off and throws a lot of people off who are not from America because they always thought like I've heard people say like we thought you guys were huge because we just see your TV shows and everyone was so
yeah.
big.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. And I was like, oh, that's because they had like 25-year-olds playing high schoolers. So that's why.
Yeah, and then like everybody looks like they're 6 something, but they're really like 5'8" in real life.
Yeah,
but,
like yeah.
No, where was I even going? You see Kareem and Kamala, they have this blissful ignorance of naivete where they're like, I just want to help. Kareem is like, oh, you want her for her power because she can help us go home? Like, oh, I can convince her. And then his people, the clandestine, that's alluding to another like mutant group in the comics, but
yeah,
they're like, no, we're going to take the power by force to go home. And I wonder if there's some type of Indian Pakistan reference to that whole thing about them being from another dimension.
I mean, I see it pretty clearly there now that you say it out loud, and I think that's exactly what's going on. You hit it right on the head. This is the current generation going like, I get your pain. I remember the stories.
Yeah.
But this needs to end. This needs to end in some form or fashion.
Yeah. Because that's what like Kamala's like, and Bruno's like warning her, like, if you do this, you're gonna die, like using your powers to this certain extent.
Yeah.
And she's like, but I can help these people. I can help them go home.
Right.
I want to do the right thing.
She has the heart of a superhero, no matter what she does. She's a heart of a dreamer, a heart of a superhero. So yeah.
Talking to you though, and all these like subtle references to Indian culture that I'm just not aware of, I was wondering like, are they trying to send a bigger message because I knew it wasn't just about the multiverse and like things of that nature, but like here you have her grandmother and her grandmother friends who get lost from their world and they're in this new one and they lost their connection to their power source. They're just trying to get home, but
but they can't go home. They've been excommunicated. Exactly. Lance, I love your analysis on this, man. This is fucking dope.
I dug deep for that one.
You did.
After going around.
This is why
the circle.
I'm glad we got to do this. No. Like I think that's exactly what's going on.
We took the long way with calling Kamala adorable and unfuckable to getting to a deeper point.
Hey, you said that. I did not say any of those things. Okay,
you completely. Didn't think Kamala's adorable?
That's all you.
She is adorable, but she isn't.
She is adorable.
You just want to hug her and be like, oh, or like the Minions, where you're like, she's so fluffy.
She is very adorable, but like
she is very adorable.
The character is not 18.
She's 19.
So I'm not. Okay,
the character is 16. Okay, yeah.
The character is like 16. So
yeah, jailbait.
Show wise, that's messed up. But like, if she's past 18. Show wise, that's fucked up. But like, if in reality she's like 19 or something,
she's 19.
Yeah, people find other people attractive or not attractive. It's all good. I think she's great for the role. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, so I definitely think that it's kind of what's going on in the background, whether or not they intended that, or no. I think they very much intended that to happen. They wanted to show. That's what I was trying to bring up with the earlier point of her grandmother going like, "I was born in and I grew up in India. Like, it doesn't make any sense to us that now I'm considered part of this new country called Pakistan. And sure, I've been here for decades, but I mean, there's still a part of me that I can't go back to."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we killed bin Laden in Pakistan. Like, and India is one of the biggest supporters of the U.S., which is weird because after the partition happened, the U.S. was actually closer to Pakistan.
Mm.
Geologically, they were closer to Russia, and it just made more sense. And Russia actually opened its trading borders to us. And so, like, if you go to like a lot of the USSR people today, they will love Bollywood.
Mm.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of wild. I had an Uber driver who was from Armenia, and he's like, "So what kind of Bollywood are you watching these days?" And I'm like, "What kind of Bollywood are you watching these days, man?" Like,
is that a thing? Because I saw that.
That's a thing.
Because in the show, it was like, here are these two really American Indian kids who just like start geeking out about Bollywood, and I'm like,
yeah, they talk about SRK, who's like the Brad Pitt of India in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I mean, Bollywood's huge. There's Bollywood. I think Pakistan has its own one that I don't know. And then there's like Tollywood, and Sri Lanka has its own version. Movies are big. Movies are
Yeah.
like one of the big things that like built India back up.
That was like initially the only thing that I felt like, all right, are y'all trying to cater a little bit by like, oh, let's throw these subtle Bollywood things out there and see if people will enjoy it. But
Maybe, but like I also felt that they also were pretty quick, and I don't know if
yeah,
I don't know if they were trying to like Pakistan and India, like they will enjoy other like
hmm
it's not as far as people make it out to be in culture. Like there's a difference, but
yeah,
I mean they'll enjoy Bollywood.
yeah,
I don't see them not enjoying it. It's too big for them not to enjoy it, and vice versa. Like I can't speak to that completely, but from my perspective, how can you not see it?
yeah,
From what I do know, like I don't know how much of this is just my family saying that India is the best and patriotism, just saying like India's economy is like one of the biggest in the world, which is true. I don't know if Pakistan could, if they have the economy to do that. I really don't know. Again, I don't know a whole lot about Pakistan's inner workings. I really don't. But I do know some things about the culture. And I know, and it was really cool to see that, like, it was a good reminder to be like, yes, the culture is not so dissimilar. And we're essentially one culture, just with different shades, with different gradients of what's going on.
yeah.
And there is a lot of strife that happens with how the government's run, and it's very theocratic. And again, I can't speak to that intelligently, so I won't.
I have like some closing point just about the future
Yeah, go for it.
of Kamala.
Go for it.
There's a couple things that I'm worried about with regards to the show. I kind of wonder, is it a one and done? Because is it going to have the same magic that the first season has as far as exploring the culture,
Yeah.
the family dynamics?
She's gonna have to find something new to navigate.
That's true, and
Yeah.
I wonder that, but then there's also these plans to use her in Miss Marvel, because like it's interesting to see the different YouTube takes on it, because there's one take like at the end of the whole show, there's the end cut scene where Kamala bracelet starts glowing, and then
It switches out her with
Carol Danvers.
yeah, which I don't know what's up with, but sure, let's see where it goes. Yeah.
I was under, and it seems like this is the more accepted theory, is that her and Carol switch places. Like,
Okay.
she teleported somewhere that Carol was, and Carol teleported to where she was.
Why would they be connected? That's the part I don't get.
I mean, the movie will explore that. And then the other possible theory was that the bracelet gave Kamala her powers from the comics, because in the comics she's more of a Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic type character, where she can, stretch her body, get bigger, and then she can also like kind of transform her body into whoever or whatever she wishes, because she does have this ability to kind of, shapeshift in a way.
That's what I've heard of as well, and like they better explain the Jinn a lot more. I kind of am tired of it just being a magic trope for Eastern people. It's like, when are we gonna have a fucking magic flying carpet after this? Like, I'm expecting that to show up next if they show this.
With the show ending and going into Miss Marvel, I worried that Kamala won't be as interesting outside of her own show.
I definitely see that as a possibility. Unfortunately,
with Miss Marvel, with the movie, I wonder if she gets kind of regulated to sidekick status. I mean, they use her as a driving plot point, kind of like America Chavez was in Doctor Strange. Like,
and I didn't like how they used her too. Like that was not really fair. Yeah,
and I think her powers, that bracelet, like they say it's the Jinn, and I think that's only because of the culture and where she grew up. That's why they make
that point when they meet the Red Daggers, where it's like, if Thor fell down, we would have called him a Jinn. It was just this is the name we used to describe what was going on. And I love that they made that point, honestly.
You kind of love it within the show, and I guess that's my fear, because in Miss Marvel, she teleports somewhere, and it's probably, I'm willing to bet it's where that bracelet came from, and you find out it's just a bracelet from an alien planet with like their own beings, because even she found the bracelet off this blue creature with blue arms that's
which looked
Usually,
very inhuman.
it kind of signals the Kree a little bit.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it looked like the Kree, and I'm like, okay, why is the I guess the Kree were in India,
yeah.
but okay,
And I think they're just going to be like, oh, Kree fell to Earth, lost the bracelet, and then you suddenly got it. Oh well, you're not special.
you think they might loop in the Inhumans because of that too? Like if since they showed the blue arm, they might do that.
I don't think so. I think
Okay,
Marvel. I think they did two disservices to the Inhumans. The first one was create that show, and then the second
shots
one
fired. Shots fired.
was completely obliterate Black Bolt.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
For the most part, Mr. Fantastic, he'll survive that type of
I mean, we
killing.
know his son is gonna come back and probably fuck shit up.
I mean, that was one thing I was thinking about. Like, there could be like some type of war between that Earth 616 because your Scarlet Witch came over here, murked our fucking leaders, and now we're coming.
Yeah, led by Mr. Fantastic's son or something like that, who
Yeah,
is like a higher than Omega level mutant. Like it's ridiculous.
but yeah, I think that was the two disservices to the Inhumans. So I don't know how much
Yeah.
further they're going into the Inhumans. I think they'll lean into the whole mutant thing, and then I wonder,
Okay.
do they use her for any future mutant shows? And then
Yeah, we're gonna have to see where this goes because
yeah,
I see your point. So like, it's gonna be very interesting to see what they do
right.
and if they've completely given up on the X-Men and the mutants, or are they gonna like use this as an excuse to bring them back?
I think they'll be wrong.
I think they'll be right, but like maybe they'll do the humans part, maybe they won't. We'll see. It's kind of like the end of Doctor Strange, and I don't want to delve too much into it more for Doctor Strange, but like we're gonna see what's gonna come after this because I felt like this was just laying the foundation for stuff to come.
Oh, Miss Marvel.
Yeah, I think they're like in terms of like how Doctor Strange 2 did that, where they were just laying stuff for future stuff to come. I don't know.
I feel the
That's my
opposite.
theory. Okay. I feel like we're just gonna have to wait to see what they do with Miss Marvel because that's I think a really good point. What are they gonna do at this point? They should have probably just stopped after Endgame because they are running out of shit to do.
Oh yeah,
As much as I enjoyed Miss Marvel and other shows and other stuff, I'm like, it's just becoming repetitive. Miss Marvel was a breath of fresh air. Shang-Chi was a breath of fresh air.
yeah. But then I feel like they exist too much inside their own vacuum. Like, if you took Shang-Chi out of Shang-Chi, would he be interesting? Like, would he be competitive with an Avengers movie? You know what I mean? Like, if you stuck him with the Avengers, like, what role are you going to regulate him to?
Combat, but like that's about it. But you'd have to make some killer combat scenes just to offset all the other stuff.
Because one of the things that makes Shang-Chi and Ms. Marvel interesting was like their cultures and how they kind of delve into it and how they kind of
Right, right.
talk about these worlds and how they existed. But then, like, oh, Shang-Chi go help you beat Thanos is like, you don't get that. Oh, there was a secret world under a waterfall. Your mom was like,
That was a
nobody
cool world.
exactly, like nobody cares about your mom being like this mystic or the secret warrior.
So she came from like basically what's the equivalent of it's like their version of Utopia.
Yeah,
And that's essentially what she was. Otherwise she was a normal person, but the effects of being there led her to be immortal
yeah.
for that time. So that's how I think it worked.
And then it's like I feel like characters like Captain America and Iron Man, like they don't exist in like these cultural worlds where it's
Yeah.
like they build off of it. They just build in conflict. And it's like the bigger the conflict, the more interesting their characters are because this is what they do.
It's this dichotomy of like being a superhero and being a person of color superhero.
Right.
And that is
Yeah.
something that's why I think this is so refreshing because we've seen the air quotes superhero so much. Like, oh, this is the new edition. It's like, well, it shouldn't matter. It should be just be a superhero who's brown, a superhero who's black, instead of a black superhero. Ideally, that's what it could be, but it's not where we're at right now.
But then isn't it more interesting? Like, can't you
I'm
say
talking more.
like,
I'm talking about more in humanity, but like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
100%.
but like in entertainment, it's important, and I'm glad. They're doing
Yeah,
it.
it's super important because don't you find it refreshing to say Miss Marvel was more interesting than, Hawkeye, because like you had all these other things working for it other than,
Yeah.
these cool fight scenes almost.
I mean, yeah, that was, and like the banter every once in a while was fun to watch. Kate Bishop was hot. Yelena was hot.
Well, yeah,
Those
I
were the
mean,
good parts.
those are
Those were the good
different.
parts about it. But like, but that was it. Like and it was fun to watch. But Miss Marvel, I fell in love with. For me,
Yeah.
I fell in love with it because I was like, oh my gosh, I was even tearing up at parts because I was just like, I finally see a part of my culture on the screen.
On the black side, that's what they captured with Black Panther.
Right. Let's wrap up. What are your final thoughts on Miss Marvel?
I think we said it. I think I saw a culture that I didn't really see represented before. I didn't see explored before. And being an outsider, being able to, hear these stories, see these characters, see what these, like, even though it's a superhero story, to see what these individuals go through on a daily basis, whether it be in school, whether it be in the mosque, whether it be with their own people or what the government thinks of them. That's like, you can't get that from like a typical beat 'em up, action packed superhero show.
You got to see someone's life instead of just someone trying to take down the bad guy. You got to see someone's life. And they did a great job of just putting you in her shoes.
Yeah.
In that way, seeing her friends and family.
Exactly. And you get to care about the family because sometimes,
the brother's hilarious.
The brother's hilarious. The dad is hilarious. You empathize with the mom.
Speaking of the family, he's married. He's not marrying a Pakistani girl. He's marrying a West African girl. She's black.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I thought that threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, that's cool, and they don't even bat an eyelash about it, and I was very.
That threw me for a loop too.
It did.
I remember asking you. Well, I wasn't too much focused on her because I figured that at the very least she was Muslim, so they accepted.
I think that's what happened, and there have been a lot of, like, if you go to the Caribbean, there's a lot of black and brown people both brought there as slaves. Right. Like Nicki Minaj is actually part Indian.
Yeah. She mixed with everything.
Yeah, it's Nicki.
It's really hard for anybody to lay claim to Nicki Minaj.
But my point being is that I think they're speaking more to that Arab African connection that was. I think this is me delving a little too much into it, but like there's always been this like Arab or brown and then African connection. Mm-hmm. There's this page I follow on Instagram called The Juggernaut, and Denzel Washington did this movie called Mississippi Masala back in the day. I never saw it, but I'd heard about it. Another good example is like my friends that I had on the podcast, their last name was Jabulani. And my dad saw that I was like friends with them on Facebook, and so he goes, "Oh, you've had some Sindhi friends," and that's like an ethnicity in India. And I was like, "No, their family's from Ghana." Like when they traced it back, so it's just it's cool for me to see like there have been intermixings with those cultures that's happened.
Yeah,
it's just cool that way.
And I think just to wrap up what I was saying, like for all those reasons, like why it was a super enjoyable show. My worry, I think, just to rehash that. Is Miss Marvel interesting outside of her own world? Kind of like Luke Cage and all these other characters, where it's like you create this world where they exist and they're like the big hero, and you get to explore all the different aspects of culture.
Yeah,
and then you take them out.
How's it going to translate to like an end game kind of thing?
Yeah, or even though Miss Marvel will be like a smaller version, but it's not about India anymore
or Pakistan. Yeah.
Right. It's just about these heroes trying to save the day.
I think that's going to be their choices. I think that's part of the theme of today's episode. It's that this is going to be of what we're going to see coming up is like, what are they going to do with the source material that they have? Are they going to go as big as they did with Endgame, or talk more about use these as an opportunity to like shine a light on underrepresented communities and talk about problems that are going on? They really make a point to show like how bad the FBI and Muslim communities have been, how the government and Muslim communities are as well. Yeah. Especially with like that part of walking in the mosque with shoes. You're not even supposed to come on with your socks. So it's just a huge disrespect. Like that's also found in some Indian religions, like some of the temples that they go to, you can't come in with shoes and stuff like that. Yeah. So very similar.
We'll talk a little bit off air about something I saw recently, and it was
gossip,
and it was like a Miss Marvel moment where it was just like, I'm just like, don't you know you're being fucking watched? And it's sad to say. It's really sad to say.
It is.
It's kind of like when
like I joke and say that I'm on 3 lists, but I probably am in some capacity. So yeah. What's funny is that like my last name is actually really common in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So I'm probably on there. That's all good.
I'll say if you weren't if you weren't born in America and say you immigrated here, I say your name would 100% be on the list right now.
Oh yeah, probably. It'd probably be a little
For
higher.
certain.
Maybe I'm a little lower,
Yeah.
like mid range.
Well, yeah. Maybe Ahmed is a little bit higher.
Oh my
than,
god!
than you.
Thank you, Jeff Dunham.
But no, I think it's. I mean, even in my own culture, for a person who won't be named, but even with like Black and Hispanic people and like the police, it's like
never been good.
That they're gonna be like this certain
way about you. Right?
You walk into a store and a cop's there, they're gonna look at you a little bit harder than
like your heart starts pounding.
Yeah, than a white person. Well, not even you, but you just know this is gonna happen. Just implicit bias.
Oh yeah.
And like for Indians, it's like it's kind of interesting. It's like
yeah, because like we still have a lot of the 9/11 stuff has finally guarantee you something terrible is gonna happen tomorrow. But like has finally calmed down. Like when I was a kid, I would always get mistaken for 3 different things. 2 of them I still get mistaken for in St. Louis. It doesn't make any sense. Number 1 would be Arab. And every time I'd hear people talk about how they would talk to me about like, oh yeah, like we hate those fucking goat fuckers, those towel heads who did all this stuff. And then I'm like, I kind of look like them. And like, this is making me really uncomfortable right now. Okay, like
because
sure.
Missouri is like not a really progressive place.
No, not at all. Just it's not progressive. It's not progressive
you
at all.
Get lumped into.
And I'm like, they're like, oh, but you're good. You're a good one. And I'm like,
you're one of the good ones.
I'm like, no, like I have, no, I don't want to be known as that. Fuck that, no. Like, and then I'd also get Mexican and Chinese, but the last one makes no sense. But that's what
Chinese, I don't see.
I don't get it either.
No,
but I get it from time to time. It happens. It's always very weird to me whenever I meet people like, oh yeah, like I hate the government too, and all this stuff, and like, oh, it's just fucking terrorists. I've seen some people who are really into martial arts and stuff, and like you meet a lot of conservative people out there, and I've heard them say stuff of like, hunt them, go and find them and kill them, and I'm like, okay, but like we haven't done a good job of discerning who are the bad guys and who are not the bad guys. We've been kind of blanketing this with drones. We're blanketing this with a really big, thick brush. And I look a lot like those people. And Kunal is a name that is up in other places too. And this is actually kind of where I wanted to do my closing thoughts.
Go for it.
So I loved it. This is a show, like I said in the beginning, that's going to walk so other shows can run. They will come back to the show for other brown stories, for other brown girls and people to come back and be like, this was that, like, and we can start here. I think it started the conversation. I don't think it nearly did not end it. There's still much to be done in lots of ways for many factors that we go into. One thing that I really liked is that they talk about names near the very end, and they draw the analysis of Kamala generally translating in Urdu, which is essentially the Arabic Hindi combination language. And Urdu comes along as a result, and it means Marvel, and they're tying it to Miss Marvel. I have actually been told by my mom that when they often are using the word Kamala, which is often attributed to women, but like there's also, I've heard of other Indian people who have the name Kamal and stuff like that. Kunal is often used as like the other version as well. So like her name means Marvel. My name means, my mom told me that it's associated in Sanskrit with the lotus flower and serenity. I also looked it up, and it also means one with beautiful eyes and golden. And now this is more in Hindi and Sanskrit. In Urdu, I think it means something different.
You do have really kind eyes.
Thank you, sir.
I must say.
Thank you very much.
You feel warm. You just look at them and you feel warm.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
It was like just a stranger just be like, I know he doesn't love me, but maybe.
That is so sweet of you. Thank you, bro. If someone knows the Urdu name of Kunal, what Kunal means in Urdu, let me know. I'd love to know. I do try my best to keep those kind eyes with everything that goes on in my world. And you have very, very tender eyes as well.
Well, thank you, partner.
This is also cool, too. Like, so Khan means king. and it's a callback to Genghis Khan. And Genghis had the Mughals come in there and everything like that. My last name means keeper of the hawks because apparently I have the lineage of landowners and people who like had falconry and like trained eagles to go kill game and bring it back to the owner. So that's what my name means. So I just like how they talked about name. I love when names have meaning. This was all over the place. I got really passionate about this episode.
I know that's what happens when the original podcast gang reunites. We just get excited.
When you get both Black Rangers back in the same spot.
Exactly.
That's just what happened. That's what happened.
I love how you brought it around. That was beautiful.
That's what I do, buddy. That's what I do best.
Couldn't have done it better.
And I didn't talk about Yakuza. But anyhow.
Oh my God. Right at the end.
But seriously, man, like it's so good to have you back. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I miss you, and I'm glad you're pursuing your life and your dreams, and moving forward. But yeah, you're like I said, anytime we do this, anytime you want to do a episode, just let me know.
Yeah, listen, man. Before we go, quick closing comments. I love you. You're one of my brothers.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
I love this show. I love the work you've been putting in, what you've been doing. I've just really been enjoying it. I hope you keep killing it. But before we go, really quickly, there was a friend of yours who did a podcast and had the audacity to say Doctor Strange was a better movie than No Way Home. And that person, I don't know if they'll be listening to this episode. I don't know if they stuck around.
I can tell them to listen.
Go to the last few minutes of the 2-hour podcast and hear me say that you, sir, while you might be a good gentleman because you're a friend of Kanal's, and I listened to the podcast, you sound like a really great guy.
He is a sweet guy.
A real sweet guy, sweetheart. I love the work that he did to create a group. But that, sir, was the most bullshit take I have ever heard. And I'm challenging you. I'm laying down the gauntlet right now.
He wants to have a match. He wants to do it.
At the end of the year, we're going to have to talk about all these Marvel movies. And we can't talk about them right now because we still got Black Panther.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to talk about these Marvel movies. And I want you to come on this podcast with me and Kanal and defend yourself. Because I can't let it slide. That is my gauntlet. That is my match proposal.
He just tipped his cowboy hat.
Exactly. End of the year, we debate what was the greatest Marvel movie of 2022.
I mean, I'm with you on that one. I actually think No Way Home was better, but I like Doctor Strange. He's welcome to his opinion, and you guys can rumble in the jungle.
It's awful
when you need to. Yeah,
it is awful. But great guy.
Oh, he's a sweetheart.
I love the work he's doing.
He's a sweetheart.
Love the work he's doing.
Dude, thank you so much. That was really sweet of you to say, and I really appreciate like the feedback you give to the episodes, and you're always welcome on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Lance out.
Knall out. Bye, fan peeps. Thanks for listening. Animated Zeppelins. Hey, fan peeps. Thanks for listening, and I'd love any feedback you have for me. Please follow the Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and follow us everywhere, social media-wise, under the handle @TNAHpod. That goes for Twitter and Instagram, and one of these days, I'll be super popular. Granted, they're underrepresented. Underrepresented. Yeah, they're not represented well. All right.
Yeah.